I find his lack of balance disturbing.
It's all that data, bro. With SLT mega deals, he's got double data for the next 2 months.
Making headlines on First at 9. Towards stability. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa decides to step down from disputed position of premiership. Urgent demands. UNF wants Ranil Wickremesinghe reappointed after Supreme Court refused to stay the interim order issued by appeal court. A chance for polls. Chairman of Election Commission to seek Supreme Court opinion on holding delayed elections. Change in leadership. Lasith Malinga named skipper of the ODI and T20 squads to New Zealand. No renegotiation. EU refuses to help British Premier Theresa May over Brexit as leaders rule out making changes to the deal.
බයික් එකක් ගත්තොත් ෆෝන් එකක්. ඔව් තෝරාගත් Yamaha බයික් මාදිලි සඳහා රුපියල් 40000ක් දක්වා වටිනා ස්මාර්ට් ෆෝන් එකක් නොමිලේ. ඉක්මන් කරන්න නොවැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි. කොන්දේසි සහිතයි. අමතන්න 0117 699 699 AMW ඉතින් පමණයි.
A very good evening and welcome to First at 9, another Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katrina Chan. Now on to your top story tonight. UPF MP Lakshmanya Pabewardene revealed that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is due to address the nation tomorrow to announce his resignation from the premiership. MP Lakshmanya Pabewardene said this speaking to media following a special meeting at the Presidential Secretariat later this evening, which was presided over by President Maithripala Sirisena and former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Meanwhile, UPF MP Nama Rajapaksa too announced the resignation of the former president in a tweet and added that the SLPP with the former president, SLFP and others will now work towards forming a broader political coalition with President Maithripala Sirisena.
Today's case has been postponed to the 16th, 17th and the 18th of January. If the Prime Minister does not resign, then there cannot be a new appointment. The people will have to face various issues come January next year. A budget cannot be passed and there is no vote of account. You cannot run a country like this. This is why Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that he will make a special statement tomorrow to resign from his position, following which the present cabinet will be abolished. The President will then have the power to appoint whoever he wishes to the posts. We cannot make any other decision because the case has been postponed and the President will be in a fix. Therefore, he decided to resign so that it will pave way to make a new government. We will be seated in the opposition and continue our fight for the elections. We have been hoping for fresh polls to ensure that people will once again get a chance to vote.
ඒක 113ක් පෙන්නලා නිවැරදි විදියට එන විදියට කරයි. අපි අවසානයේ තීන්දුව කරා හෙට උදේට.
We never said we resigned, but by taking on such a government, we were able to fulfill 3 wishes. We were able to destroy the 2/3 majority this government had. We were able to stop the parliament from the sale of state property. We were also able to stop Ranil Wickremesinghe and the diaspora from selling this country.
දෙමළ ඩාස්පෝරාවත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා මේ රට විකුණන්න ගිය හැම වැඩපිළිවෙලකටම තිත තියලා තිනවා.
Meanwhile, taking to Twitter, UPF MP Nama Rajapaksa said the former president has decided to resign from the premiership tomorrow after an address to the nation in order to ensure stability of the nation. He further added that the SLPP with former president, SLFP and others will now work to form a broader political coalition with President Maithripala Sirisena.
Now, it was yet another eventful day at the Supreme Court as the country's top court allowed a lower court ruling to be in effect, which barred former President Mahinda Rajapaksa being the Prime Minister. The former president was, however, afforded the opportunity to appeal the decision delivered by the Court of Appeal on the 3rd of December. The appeal court had delivered an interim order restraining Mahinda Rajapaksa and his cabinet from functioning until the hearing of the writ of the quo warranto filed against them is concluded. It was, however, challenged by former President Rajapaksa at the Supreme Court, arguing that the interim order is unconstitutional and that the Court of Appeal has no authority to issue such orders.
The attorney representing leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickremesinghe, yesterday produced a motion to the Supreme Court requesting that the appeal against the interim order on former President Mahinda Rajapaksa holding the office of Prime Minister be heard before a 5-member bench of judges. The motion also sought to exclude Supreme Court Justice Eva Vanasundara as a member of the judge bench. However, responding to the motion, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's party submitted a counter-motion stating that the case does not require a 5-member judge bench as the petition was taken up by a panel of 2 judges at the Court of Appeal. The motion was thereby taken for consideration before a 3-member bench comprising of Supreme Court Justices Eva Vanasundara, Bhuvaneka Alubihare and Vijit Malalgoda. Appearing on behalf of Ranil Wickramasinghe, Counsel K. Kanageswaran pointed out that the petition, which is of national and constitutional interest, should be taken up before a 5-member judge bench. President's Counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing on behalf of Mahinda Rajapaksa, countered that since the appeal court petition was taken up before a 2-member judge bench, there is no need for a 5-member judge bench for the interim order. Although Counsel K. Kanageswaran requested an opportunity to object, Counsel Romesh De Silva, Supreme Court Judge Eva Vanasundara rejected the request. In the meantime, Supreme Court Justice Eva Vanasundara today announced before the Supreme Court of her retirement from 40 years of service. Announcing her retirement, Justice Eva Vanasundara added that she had never given a verdict that was biased towards any individual and that facts and documentation were considered in making decision, which will be the same practice during today's case as well. Announcing the decision on the motion, she said that the petition will be allowed to be taken up before a 3-member judge bench. Thereafter, a 3-member judge bench inclusive of Supreme Court judges Eva Vanasundara, Bhuvaneka Alubihare and Vijit Malalgoda started hearing appeal against the appeal court's interim order restraining him from functioning in office. Making submissions on behalf of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, President's Counsel Romesh De Silva pointed out that the Court of Appeal had issued the interim order against the government after considering an unedited copy of the Hansard, which was presented as evidence that a no-confidence motion was passed. He pointed out that nowhere in the unedited copy of the Hansard had the Speaker announced that the no-confidence motion was passed, and it is evident in the Parliament footage of the day that the Speaker did not announce it was passed. The President's Counsel went on to say that the country will face serious repercussions by preventing Mahinda Rajapaksa as Prime Minister and the Cabinet from carrying out their duties based on the unedited version of the Hansard presented by the petitioners. He established the fact that the interim order issued by the Court of Appeal was therefore completely wrong. President's Counsel Gamini Marapana, in the meantime making submissions before the bench of judges, said the Court of Appeal called to make submissions on what legal grounds Mahinda Rajapaksa acts in office. Counsel Marapana said that through this order the courts had arrived at a preconception that Mahinda Rajapaksa doesn't have any power to hold office. He went on to challenge as to what legal grounds the Court of Appeal had to issue an interim order based on preconceptions. President's Counsel Gamini Marapana requested to issue a stay order on the interim order issued by the Court of Appeal since a no-confidence motion was not passed properly on the 14th of November in Parliament. Meanwhile, President's Counsel Ali Sabri, speaking on behalf of the petitioners, said that although his faction raised objections that the appeal court doesn't have a mandate to give a ruling regarding the petitions, it had not considered that fact. However, speaking on behalf of the respondents, President's Counsel Kanageswaran said that 122 parliamentarians had informed the Court of Appeal through affidavits that a no-confidence motion was passed against Mahinda Rajapaksa, which itself proves the majority stance of Parliament on the no-confidence motion. He also pointed out that although the attorneys of the petitioners challenged the manner in which the no-confidence motion was passed in Parliament and the Hansard regarding the day's parliamentary proceedings, according to the Constitution, a Parliament Hansard can't be challenged by any faction outside Parliament. The President's Counsel also pointed out that any issue that takes place within Parliament can only be corrected inside the Parliament. Therefore, attorneys representing the respondents argued that the Supreme Court does not have the mandate to challenge proceedings in Parliament. However, submissions were concluded at around 5:30 p.m. and court proceedings were adjourned for 10 minutes. The 3-member judge bench then delivered their ruling on the appeal. Supreme Court Justice Eva Vanasundara, pronouncing their decision, said that with consent of majority of members of the bench, the appeal filed by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa and his cabinet will be taken up for hearing on the 16th, 17th and 18th of January next year. However, Justice Vijit Malalgoda had ruled against taking up the appeal again. The bench had in the meantime unanimously rejected the appeal to stay the interim order issued restraining Mahinda Rajapaksa from functioning as Premier and the Cabinet from carrying out its duties. The Supreme Court further ordered the Court of Appeal not to hear the petition against Mahinda Rajapaksa and his Cabinet until the Supreme Court hearing is over. In the meantime, the petitioners were informed to make a request to Chief Justice if there be a need to take the appeal before a 5-member judge bench.
Meanwhile, several politicians expressed their views to media on their way out of the Supreme Court.
A government led by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who commands the support and the confidence of the majority in Parliament, should be established. The only thing that should be done is to take immediate action to bring the country back to normalcy by appointing the person who commands the confidence of the majority as the Prime Minister. The arising issue is that the validity of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet before the law. The Supreme Court has postponed the hearing, and in this backdrop, a new Prime Minister and a Cabinet cannot be appointed, with the case still going on. The President will have to rule alone until a decision is given. When we are trying to garner the support of 15.7 million voters, the UNP is after methods to postpone the case. During the incident near the Lake House, we saw how much the UNP adheres to democracy.
The United National Party threatens to launch a mass protest on the 17th of this month if President Maithripala Sirisena fails to arrive at an appropriate decision to solve the current political situation in the country by the end of today. They made this remark at a media briefing held at Temple Trees today.
The Constitution, which is considered the supreme document of the country, received its due respect. It is a shame that MP Gammampila said that we postponed the elections for 2 years. It wasn't an effort to postpone elections, but to hold the election in accordance with the Constitution. The President has been warned by the Supreme Court. Therefore, he should keep his likes and dislikes aside and immediately act according to the Constitution. If President Maithripala Sirisena does not provide a solution by the end of the day, we will commence a public struggle. During the group discussions yesterday, we decided that if anyone is to join the UNP, we would like to consider incorrupt politicians. We are in fact in discussion with such a group.
The Janata Vimukti Perumana insists that if the President continues to act arbitrarily, they will trigger a no-confidence motion in Parliament against him. The propaganda secretary of the party, Vijita Herath, said that addressing a media briefing held at the party headquarters this morning.
For the first time in the country's history, the Supreme Court reversed a wrong decision taken by the President. No one can use the Constitution as a tool that can be controlled according to their own will. We were able to achieve this victory because the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Bankrupt parties cannot say the current political situation is a result of the 19th Amendment. This is in fact a result of an obvious political conspiracy. Therefore, the executive presidency should be abolished. The JVP will expedite measures to do so. We have already tabled a draft to abolish the executive presidency. Given this situation, we expect to intervene in passing the draft in Parliament, followed by a referendum. We call to stabilize the country and take measures to establish a lawful government. That's the responsibility of the President. He has already breached the Constitution and has become an offender before the law. Therefore, a vote of confidence can be taken against the President. If he continues to take arbitrary decisions in the future as well, we are ready to take action.
General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Professor Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa, says that it is the people who holds the right to make a final decision on the country's political matters. He expressed these views to media following a special meeting at the residence of the former president this morning.
We saw a chain of events in the past few days. This makes it difficult to predict how matters will end. Although the law sets the foundation for the country's political framework, it cannot change the public mandate. At the end of the day, citizens are the ones who make the final decision. There has been a discourse amongst people following the verdict. The President, the party and the Central Working Committee will guide the way forward. Do not, however, be fooled by certain people who say that they are part of the party and make false comments to benefit their own political agenda.
ප්‍රචාරයන්ට රැවටෙන්න එපා.
Speaker Karu Jayasuriya states that indiscipline in the country will not be tolerated and pledged that he will stand up against any such action. He made these remarks attending a religious function in Piliyandala yesterday.
Society faces severe damages due to deteriorated discipline. We will speak out at every instance. We will express our thoughts fearlessly. An indisciplined society will affect the future generations to come. At present, we feel sorry for this country. Politicians will only be able to govern if there is a country left. Some say we have a leadership crisis in the country while others refuse to believe so. I'd like to say such a crisis exists in this country.
නායකත්වයේ පිළිබඳ බරපතල ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා කියලා. සමහරු කියනවා එහෙම එකක් නැහැ කියලා තියෙනවා.
On to one of our headline making news now. Chairman of the Election Commission Mahinda Deshapriya says he hopes to seek Supreme Court opinion on holding provincial council elections. Addressing media following a program for state officials of the Hambantota district, he said the decision to seek Supreme Court consultation was taken due to several political parties accusing the Election Commission of avoiding elections.
They are not yet resolved. The parliamentary report on the matter has not been issued. Therefore, the elections can't be held under the newly introduced electoral system. We hope the parliament will decide to call elections under the old system. Since political parties accuse us of not holding provincial council elections, the Election Commission has decided to seek consultations of the Supreme Court regarding the matter.
The Criminal Investigations Department arrested 2 more Navy personnel in connection with the abduction of the 11 youth in 2008 and 2009. According to the police media spokesperson, the suspects were arrested last night and were produced before Fort Acting Magistrate Attorney at Law Srimani Baddevala today. They were later remanded until the 28th of this month. With that, let us take a look at some other local stories making news across Sri Lanka.
Member of the organisation Puravasi Balaya Saman Ratnapriya, who is being probed for a statement he made that allegedly posed a threat to national security, was summoned to the Police Special Investigation Unit to record a statement this morning. He was summoned following a complaint lodged by General Secretary of the Pivithuru Helaurumeya, Upul Nishantha, on the 9th of December. 9 persons were injured when their van fell off a 200-metre precipice near the 24th milepost along the Ellavai road last night. The injured were admitted to Badulla and the Thalava hospitals, while 3 persons admitted to the Badulla hospital have been transferred to the Kandy hospital for further treatment. A walk carried out by 5 disabled soldiers calling for action to be taken against the hunt for war heroes by Western nations reached the Kataragama temple yesterday. The soldiers carried out the campaign for 19 days, commencing their walk from Anuradhapura.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. Former President Chandrika Bandaranayake laments the state of the country, saying that a lack of a government for nearly 8 weeks is having an adverse effect on its people. The former president made her thoughts clear on the matter while addressing a seminar at the BMICH in Colombo.
It has been 7.5 weeks since the country was left without a government and not a single ministry is functioning. Inflation and the cost of goods have increased while salaries cannot be increased either. I think the budget document which was postponed contained a salary hike. Investors pulled out and some withdrew even after signing agreements. With the end of the war, both Sinhala and Tamil people live in harmony. The war that, however, was brought to a conclusion by killing off the entire terrorist force. So how do we end this war in Parliament? Some say rocks should be tied to the feet of all and they should be dumped in sea. That too cannot be done. Then let's decide what should be done, for this is a travesty.
In business news, the Asian Development Bank warns that the recent political uncertainty will cloud Sri Lanka's growth prospects in the short term, despite being part of the fastest growing sub-region in developing Asia. Issuing its monthly supplement, Asian Development Outlook yesterday, ADB showed that Sri Lanka's GDP grew by 3.7% in the second quarter of 2018. ADB added that in the first half of 2018, Sri Lanka's economy saw revived private consumption, continued tightening of the government current spending and stagnant fixed investment. The ADB further states that Sri Lanka's inflation has slowed more than anticipated in the updated largely due to falling food prices to an average 2.4% annually from January to October. Commenting on South Asia, ADB identifies the region to have robust growth, highlighting that the region is on track to achieve the updated growth forecast of 7% for 2018. However, the forecast for 2019 is revised down marginally from 7.2% projected in September to 7.1%. The Australia Price Index today ended 0.04% up at 6,062.55, while the S&P 20 Index shed 0.16% to end at 3,149.43. Market turnover was 296.8 million rupees, well below this year's daily average of 824.6 million rupees. We have a brief report on today's trading.
During the week, the ASPI edged down by 0.1%, mainly due to price losses in counters such as Dialog Asiata, Nestle Lanka and Commercial Bank. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 627 million rupees. Foreigners remained active for the week, closing as net sellers, where foreign sales accounted for 53% of the total weekly turnover.
Now, stocks worldwide tumbled today after weak economic data from China and Europe fanned concerns of a global economic slowdown and left investors fretting over the wider impact of a still unresolved Sino-US trade dispute. The MSCI All-Country World Index, which tracks stocks across 47 countries, was down 0.5%. Eurozone business ended the year on a weak note, expanding at the slower pace in over 4 years as new order growth all but dried up, hurt by trade tensions and violent protests in France. Another survey showed French business activity plunge unexpectedly into contraction this month, retreating at the fastest pace in over 4 years in the face of violent anti-government protests. Germany's private sector expansion slowed to a 4-year low, meanwhile suggesting growth in Europe's largest economy may be weak in the final quarter. The data out of Europe added to weak readings from China, where November retail sales grew at the weakest pace since 2003 and industrial output rose the least in nearly 3 years. Underlying risk to the economy as Beijing works to defuse a trade dispute with the United States. Now, the Sri Lankan rupee ended weaker today amid pressure on the currency due to foreign outflows from bonds and stocks. Let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded today. European Union leaders have said the Brexit withdrawal agreement is not open for renegotiation despite appeals from British Prime Minister Theresa May. She wanted legal assurances on the Irish backstop to help her deal get through Parliament after she delayed a Commons vote in anticipation of defeat. The Prime Minister said the deal was at risk if MPs' concerns could not be addressed. European Union leaders gave Prime Minister Theresa May assurances yesterday that they would seek to agree a new deal with Britain by 2021 so that the contentious Irish backstop is never triggered. EU Council President Donald Tusk warned, however, that the divorce agreement agreed with May in late November was not open for renegotiation, adding that EU leaders would now seek the deal's ratification by the European Parliament.
We would like our British friends in 4 weeks' time to let us know what they are expecting, because because we are taking part in a debate that is sometimes crazy, imprecise and would like to see some firm clarifications on this point. As we do not know what will the collective reactions of the 27 European member states and the United Kingdom will be, the European Commission will publish on the 19th of December all the generally useful information concerning the preparation of a no-deal Brexit scenario.
Shadow Brexit Secretary Sir Keir Starmer said May had failed to get meaningful changes and she should reinstate the vote on her deal next week. The British Prime Minister's visit to the European Council in Belgium to appeal to fellow EU leaders for concession to help her win support in Parliament next month came at the end of a week that has seen her first delay the vote on the withdrawal agreement in Parliament, then win a vote of no confidence brought by MPs unhappy with it. She vowed to listen to the concerns of the 37% of Tory MPs who voted against her and was hoping to assuage their concerns about the controversial backstop plan in the agreement. Critics say the backstop, aimed at preventing a hard border in Northern Ireland, would keep the UK tied to EU rules indefinitely and curb its ability to strike trade deals. Conservative MPs demanded changes to the backstop to make it clear that it could not last forever and the UK could terminate the arrangement on its own.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Here's a look at your city-by-city weather forecast for the next 24 hours. And that is it for Mother Derana First at 9 for tonight. Since it's Friday, it's time for the good story of the week. This week, our good story comes from our own country, an attempt to increase the forest density of the country.
This week, the good story comes from Sri Lanka, and it's an initiative by Sri Lanka Air Force, who carried out the first ever seed bombing operation in Nochiagama recently. The Command Agro Unit of the Sri Lanka Air Force, in collaboration with the University of Peradeniya, spearheaded the project to increase Sri Lanka's forest cover. This project aims to achieve sustainable development goals by increasing green cover from the present 27% to 32% by year 2030. SLAF Mi-17 helicopter took off from SLAF base Anuradhapura with the first load of seed bombs of 3 varieties, Karanda, Mi and Kumbuk. Approximately 5,000 seed bombs were dropped in the Ranurava government forest in a 5-acre land area, approximately 13 nautical miles from SLAF base Anuradhapura. The initiative was carried out under the leadership of Commander of the Air Force, Air Marshal Kapila Jayampati.
Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.